We were actually looking for the idea of what the show would be about, but being artistic in French, they said, don't worry, it'll be okay, it's Cirque, you know, the Beatles, it'll be fine.
So we said, well, we're going to start from really the word of the musics. And what is Walrus, what is Eleanor Rigby, what is, Lucy in the Sky, what is those characters that have lived in our imagination.
We said, okay, we have to connect the imaginary, the imagination of Cirque du Soleil with the imagination of the Beatles.
Originally, George was friends with the Cirque people and knew them well, so he said we should do something together.
I think maybe 1999, George had a friendship with Guy La Liberté, and, Guy is so bohemian and creative and just sort of edgy. Of course, George would be attracted to him.
For him, this project was not only doing a show, but it was also the possibility of having the Beatles member left alive working together on a creative project again.
Well, George Harrison was the one. He really thought that was a great idea, and I think his instinct was right.
Normally, Cirque have their own live artists to play, but with the Beatles, we didn't want them to just be sound alikes, so we wanted them to use the actual recordings.
We started just saying, like, well, let's clean it up and, make it sharp. And suddenly, we had another couple of meetings, and it was, hey, let George Martin actually reinvent it, really. George has the credibility and the honesty, and, we've spent a lot of time together. He has our trust to do this job. There was talk of, like some new hip guy, which sounds all very nice for a minute. We got George Martin, who's always been hip. So George Martin and Giles did it because they're the only ones who could do it.
It was a good combo, George and Giles, sort of father and son kind of thing. It was great, yeah.
Working alongside George Martin was his son Giles.
3 repeats of that.
A talented record producer in his own right.
I'll do that.
Okay.
I couldn't have done this by myself, and I knew I needed Giles because he's got things he's got a command of the modern technology, which I don't have.
Things that you dared are things that George might have felt reluctant without your encouragement.
I think you're probably right, yeah. It was a good combination.
I thought that he was my protection. I could dare to do things, and then if he didn't like them, then I'd have to go back to my room.
What was it like working with the Beatles in this studio?
In the very early days, of course, it was dead simple. I treated the band like a broadcast. Technology was pretty primitive. It was 2-track at the most. And so everything was a performance. And they had to learn to play together very well. I'm not being immodest to say that, we played it well. We had a great team, and the Beatles was a great team, so we could talk about it, don't like that, or like that. So it's 4 pretty good heads on a piece of music. But then we had a great production team. In the early days, I had great difficulty in getting hold of them, because once they were successful, they were all off all over the world. And I had to ask Brian Epstein, I need a record. When can I have them? Well, I can give you Thursday afternoon, that kind of thing. And it wasn't until they went through their, what I might call the bubblegum period of the simple songs, and they wanted to do much more in the studio than they had done. And then they just went wild. The stuff that poured out amazed me. And in fact, it strained me too, because they were saying, okay, what can you give us, George? We want something really fantastic here. And they're pushing the frontiers all the time.
And you're continuing to push the frontiers. I mean, this is an ambitious remix of very familiar tracks. What's the first step in the process?
The first thing we have to do with a project like this is go down to the vaults of Abbey Road and dig out the original masters that were recorded in the 60s that my dad recorded back then. It was astounding for us to find out that none of them had been actually catalogued in a digital way, but also equally surprising to find out that they actually sound like they've been recorded yesterday. So we have a very high-quality digital system in which that we go directly from the original 4 tracks into a computer.
By separating the tracks and even individual instruments, George and Giles were able to freely manipulate, adding, subtracting, and sometimes totally remixing one Beatles track with another.
Suddenly they'd taken Within You Without You and put the Tomorrow Never Knows drums on it, and then started to bring in a guitar from here and a thing from there.
Some of my drum patterns are put on tracks they weren't on originally. Some bass lines, original vocal takes. I mean, on just Octopus's Garden, there's another take of me on there, which is very lovely.
Ryan, make sure after Fleur stay to the right, because Cesar's going to drop right away.
Cirque have recruited extreme sports fanatics who learnt their skills in streets all over the world. In this case, skaters from Brazil. The discipline required to work within the confines of a stage is a new skill to master.
Is coordination the thing, Ryan? Is that the most important thing?
Yeah, synchronization, timing. That's it. Of course, these guys came from a world where they skate predominantly individually.
Yeah.
So going from a wide ramp to a ramp that's only 6 feet wide, it's skating within a structure of only 4 people. So the act is only 2 minutes and 20 seconds long. So it's a matter of a lot of action, a lot of routines.
Do you have to stop them taking risks?
At times, yeah.
But they would also expect the Beatles.
Ready?
Okay, come on then, George. Yes. You ready, Ringo?
I think.
Okay, so what should I do now then? We have hours and hours of tapes that come from the recording sessions where you would hear the boys more than counting 1, 2, 3, 4, but talking with each other, appreciating what they're doing. And I decided to start building dialogues out of those outtakes, and then to give a visual support to those voices.
Oh, God.
Now, broken another string.
I love the talking, because it put us in that environment, you know, in the studio, and the fun we used to have before we made these records, which, you know, was always about the music. But the chatter I loved. I thought it seemed like it could be now in a way. You know, so that was a great idea, whoever that was.
I loved the shadow sequence.
You liked it?
Yeah, yeah. We really, it's so
I'm relieved. We were nervous about it.
No,
about
but you know,
opinion.
I think I want more.
Well, we have some. We have some others.
There's one other
He's
sequence.
ready to do more voice if you want.
I'll do more voices. You've got 2.5 hours.
The big problem we have is with Ringo, because he was not mic'd in the studio. All of that comes from the pre-record, before the 1, 2, 3, 4, you know? And afterward. Ringo, we have very, very little.
When they're chatting, they'd have the vocal mic, so they could all, like, chat. And I could hear with the headphones. But I never had a vocal mic because of the drums. It would have leaked. So there's very little of me doing. But that's how it was. And somebody mentioned, we thought we might bring you in to say, yes, OK, blah. But it wouldn't have been right, you know? It's the wrong time.
This is the only show in the world you can come and see what appears to be the Beatles live kind of thing. You know, it's a clever trick.
Our husbands are actually speaking, and also you just see them moving around, you know, on the screen, and it choked me up.
John?
Yeah. Does this guitar sound in tune?
You just want to pull them off you want to just pull them right there, because it's so close, and, you know, the voices are so intimate and so familiar, the way that they just resonate in your ear in a vibration that nobody else has.
I suddenly discovered I was halfway out of tune, but I continued playing because I'm no goon.
As you listen, you sense their presence.
For me, it was quite traumatic to listen to some of the stuff we did all those years ago, because I'm right there with them again.
Listen to this. This is before While My Guitar Gently Weeps.
Okay, just try it. Take 1. I'll just have cheese and lettuce and Marmite sandwich and coffee.
Okay.
Actually, they came up with the idea of my writing a special score for that demo. I was asked to write a string score, or score whatever I wanted, to accompany George's version of it. This is going to be done with George's track.
The original recording you did at
Yeah.
Abbey Road.
Olivia put her complete trust in George Martin, allowing him to do something unprecedented, even though it broke the rule of only using original tracks.
I think he was very sympathetic to the music. He really understood what it was. You know, he didn't stray from what George was trying to do in that song. In fact, I think he took it somewhere else.
I think it sounds great. It works great in the show and on the album.
George was a dear friend, but he's not with us anymore, and Olivia is. And I was writing the music for a guy who's gone, and it's a very sensitive thing, and I was very concerned about doing the right thing that Olivia would like and everybody else would like. So I was walking on hot coals to a certain extent. But Olivia came to the session, and when I saw her face through the control room window, and when I saw a beaming smile, I knew I was all right. And she loved it.
Listen, would you work on this record we're making? We just need a nice wild sax solo. You know, you can do that, Ronnie. We're all going ba 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 ba. He's going. Anyway, he's gutted. You know, I met up with him weeks later after, and he heard it on the radio somewhere. He said, "What did you do to my solo?" I said, "I'm sorry, man. You know, this is like, it's pop. This isn't jazz. And we, you know, it's a different thing. Still sounds good, Ron. Great." But he was always a little bit pissed at, you know, what do you do? So now, finally, in the show and on this album, at the end of Lady Madonna, you suddenly hear, Ronnie! So, you know, he's not with us anymore, but he would have been pleased to finally be revealed in all this glory. The memory I have of Hey Bulldog was doing the vocal with John, which we sort of did live. And just at the end, all the ad-libbing, you know, hey, and pretending to be dogs, woof, and all of that, hey, down boy, and all that. You know, those are things that stick, because those are the fun bits. No, I remember just goofing around on the vocal takes, you know.
If you just twist things slightly, people listen again.
That's right.
And it's not as though it's a better version of Lady Madonna than the original. It's not, you know, I think the original's fantastic. It just, if you do twist something, people wake up and maybe they'll go back and listen to the original again. Or...
Yeah, what to say? We just watched a little bit of it. We think it's fantastic, very exciting. I think you're great acrobats, great performers, and I think it's going to be a fantastic show. Really fantastic. So thank you. But I want you to work harder. Much harder. That's it.
As well as the acrobatics, which Cirque have made their trademark, the narrative of the songs forced them to stretch their imaginative skills.
Use more space with your... Yeah, exactly. This is nice.
The task this time was to turn the performers into a cast of sea creatures.
We bring all the audience with us in the underwater scene. So we have fish flying in the air, light elements that represent fish that are just moving around, and then characters that are floating like Medusa. And then we are into this garden of octopus.
But keep, like, bringing everything at the top, including the back, and then, like...
The choreography are very simple with props, but you get the feeling that you are under the sea with the song. So it was really to create that with elements of lights to make a feeling that we are moving into this world with Ringo.
The visualization of Octopus's Garden was a highlight of the show, as was the new musical interpretation, with Ringo Starr's distinctive voice given a dramatic new opening treatment.
With all of these songs, with all of this, we didn't ever want to have people thinking, oh, we'll listen to a Beatles CD. You know, it's got to be more interactive, it's got to feel... And so the introductions were very important to us, the way they worked. And so we're trying to paint a picture all the time. So with this, we used the strings from Goodnight and the sound effects, all the sound effects from Yellow Submarine, the actual song Yellow Submarine. They must be BBC sound effects, actually, originally, but they became Beatles after a while.
I must tell you that when Ringo heard this for the first time, it was a picture to watch him, because he had no idea what was coming up.
I loved it. I loved it. First of all, I thought he had my voice a little too loud. I was trying to hide it a bit, but it works because it's very pure. Yeah, let's get crazier. You know, I love that we're re-enhancing the Beatle music.
You've got a real sense of their personalities, their different personalities coming through. John there in the background, those sort of interventions that you've got in there, create that kind of sense that they're there, as you say, that they're present.
Well, I think everything they did, everything they did on tape, they have so much character to it, and they're such four individuals that they're in a band together. You can't avoid, if you take John and put him on as in that case the middle section of Octopus's Garden, you know, he just beams through it. In the same way you take Ringo's voice and it's just on its own, it's so much Ringo. You can, you know, immediately tell it's him singing it. So you can't get away from their stamps they stuck on everything, which made them the Beatles, I suppose.
John Lennon's voice and personality suffuse many of the recordings, along with his personal history. Cirque drew upon aspects of this history to reanimate the song A Day in the Life. When he was 17, John's mother was knocked down and killed by a drunk driver as she was crossing the road.
The car crash is definitely something that symbolizes a very important part of John Lennon's life when he was growing up.
Whenever I listen to Strawberry Fields, I love the sound, and it's like it was a combination of John's artistic voice, and how George Martin treated it. And it's one of the most beautiful songs, I think.
How did you find this particular recording?
Yoko gave it to us. It was one of the things she had in her scrapbook, so to speak. Nobody had ever heard it before, and she said, "You might be interested in this." I said, "Not half I won't be," you know. John just put a little tiny tape recorder on the side and then started playing into it, doing it just for himself. And it was interesting because it was when he was actually beginning to compose the song, and his first lyric was what became the second verse. "No one, I think, is in my tree." And that's all he had at that time. Later he wrote "Living is Easy with Eyes Closed" and developed the song. But we have a recording of that very, very first gestation of the song. Well, it's just him by himself. And in fact, you don't hear it, but in the same tape, you hear his little boy coming in and talking to him about going out to do something, you know.
It was so spontaneous, I take it, so improvised, that there were all kinds of other things going on in the studio.
I mean, it was very John. I mean, I wasn't there at the time, but it's very John in order to document everything he did. He liked to, you know, he was the one who would make home recordings. You know, he did as a sketch pad all the time.
So what's the mood? How did Dominic visualise this?
He asked us to get across the creativity of the Beatles in the studio, which we thought, oh, you know, how do you do that? You know, he goes, "Can you not create a jam session?" We were like, "Not really, no." So we thought it might be an idea to start with something just purely from home and expand it through. So it gets wider and wider, just actually visually on stage.
If it was a time when they started to use drugs, you know, sometimes, and then there was a feeling of euphoria. So we tried to create that feeling, and that's why as it evolved, that piece brings in Sgt. Pepper. It's really the idea is that this character, Sgt. Pepper, has got his band now together again.
So we started off with the crazy rhythm you recorded.